The Marla and Dave radio experience begins in 3, 2, 1.
Now, if you're ready, we will begin.
Welcome to the Marla and Dave radio show. This is reality radio with a couple that keeps it real. Current events, pop culture, music, relationships, fitness, the hot topics of the day. Marla and Dave Thomas. This is the Marla and Dave radio show. Real radio. Turn up!
I don't even know what to do anymore. I'm confused.
Let me help you. Welcome to the Marla and Dave show. I'm Dave.
And I'm Dave, too. We're all Dave up in this house. I'm Marla.
I like your distinction, Dave, too.
Welcome to the Marla and Dave show. I'm Marla. He's Dave. This is the MaD house. This is the MaD house. And you know what? I'm actually happy to be back.
Wow.
I'll be honest with you.
Was there a question whether you'd be happy or not?
Well, I was confused in the beginning because I was like,
more than normal.
What is this mic doing here in my face? What am I supposed to be doing with this thing right here? I've been gone for so long.
Testing 1 2.
I miss Tony. Look at him. He's pouting because we're you and I.
Okay. Let's get back to the show.
Oh wait. Tony, by the way, I
miss you too, Tony.
Thank you, Dave.
I had a
Can we do some patty cakes?
Oh, yes, we can.
There you go.
We'll do it with our feet.
Dave, I don't know what this is. This is not patty
like
cake.
yeah.
This is some kind of weirdness that you're doing over there. Anyway, today this is probably going to be this is one of the lightest moments that we might have in this show. Today's topic is pretty serious. One of the most serious. It's one of the most emotional shows for a lot of reasons, as you will see as we get into it. But
depending on who you actually talk to, the statistics are 1 in 4 or maybe 1 in 5 people suffer from some type of mental illness or personality disorder. Right. We know these stats all too well because we've experienced it in our family.
And so today we are here to break our silence about mental illness and the effects as it has rocked us as a family, personally. So don't go anywhere today. It's pray for us. It's gonna be it's an emotional show for me. I was kind of deciding today if I could get through this without the big lump in our throat. But the treat and the guest is not only do I have my mom here, who is one of the few people, if not only, has been between she and Dave that I can talk about this with truthfully, as well as she is a professional in this area, a health professional, and has done psychiatric nursing for years at the highest level, because when you're dealing with veterans before she retired, as we know, that's a very mentally crushing effect that a lot of vets have after they come back from service. So we're just glad to have her.
We're blessed to have Mimi as well, because we turn to her for advice in our situation on a regular basis.
And you're going to be able to do the same. Well, I'm going to share my mother with you. Everybody knows I'm very guarded about my mom because she's so smart and pretty and so giving and so lovely. And I normally don't like anyone to touch her or talk to her, or most likely and most definitely don't kiss her. But today, I'm going to share her. So you get a pass. Lamont, if you're listening, you get one pass. Anyway, let's talk about our month in review. The last time we were here, I think we came back, Tony, and we had one show after I came home from Jamaica. And I did the Rihanna thing. Why?
Okay.
Why?
That was the highlight of the show.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what?
Something
that's
like
interesting, considering the last show, Colin Kaepernick still doesn't have a job. That's crazy. You know, we need to start a movement.
Frank.
Employ the cap.
Yeah, you know what? It's really whack on a lot of levels. Yeah. Summer travel. Dave, we came home from Jamaica. I came home from Jamaica, cleaned out my suitcase and repacked, and we jetted off to Hawaii for 2.5 weeks. Our first week, we were in Kauai.
Yeah.
And you know what? We should have sent Tony. I'm going to send Tony a video maybe, and we can. I want to show you.
Nude beach?
Dave was
Good try.
Dave was teabagging the fish. That's all we got out of that. Dave teabagged the fish. Anyway, Dave got a chance to do about 5 or 6 dives, which is his
6 dives. Yeah, I love scuba
He
diving.
dove a wreck. He got to wrap a baby octopus wrapped on his arm. He got to see
the pictures.
I have a video.
Oh,
I'm
good.
going to send it to Tony, and we'll probably play it during one of the breaks. Dave is Black Cousteau, Tony, in case you didn't know that.
I actually backed myself into being a nitrox certified, so which is a mixed gas.
Now they know you're a liar.
That you can literally stay down
forever.
Deeper, longer.
Right.
Because the first time they said, "Hey, are you nitrox certified?" They didn't really ask me. They said, "Here's nitrox for you," and I went down. Matter of fact, we told the people in Poipu, that I wasn't actually certified, and they said, "Okay, well, we'll kind of work with you a little bit." So when I went to do it for the wreck dive, which was down about really deep,
in Honolulu,
105, 110.
Shout out to Paige.
I thought I could do the exact same thing, so I ended up getting certified for real for nitrox by kind of backing my way into it.
So we have some cool pics and videos about that. I'll make sure that I share before this day is over. It might be a good calming relief for the topic that we're tackling today. Also, when I got home from Hawaii, I told Layla Hathaway, who was a dear friend, that I wanted to come. We would check out the show that she was doing. She's been on tour with Layla Hathaway and Mary J. Blige, the Strong Woman Tour. That was a great show. I went to Vegas, hung out with the staycationers. What's up, staycationers? Also, I found out that my mother has plugged herself in to a group of spirited elderly people that I also got a chance to play with. Yeah, the senior Vegas tour. It was great. You guys make great veggie meat. I had some really good veggie meat there. I got to hang out and have a good time. Actually, they've become my crew, Tony. This is like the last stop. You know what I mean? Like, Mom?
It was kind of strange that you call yourself a staycationer when you were actually on actual vacation.
David, don't worry about what we do. Okay, you start your own group.
If I were in the staycationer, I'd kick you out, but
yeah.
I'm just saying.
You're not the leader of us, Dave. You're not.
This weekend, we went to see Booker T. Jones and the Stax Review.
Right.
Booker T was part of Booker T and the MGs, of course. The show was put on by KJazz 88.1 FM. Karen Lovely opened the show. Arthur Adams was the second opener. And Marla, what you feel about the opening act?
I'm not saying anything.
It was kind of funny because
I was nice to be outside.
Arthur Adams is a pretty cool blues guitar player.
And I will say that the venue was incredible. I really did enjoy the Ford
Amphitheater.
I have something to say about this, though. If you get an opportunity to go to the Ford Amphitheater, do not wear heels. It is a beast. I was mad. I was like, why am I not in my tennis shoes? It is a hike. Whatever you do, there's a billion stairs.
It really is.
Mountains to climb. It's crazy.
Anyway, we went to support our friend and the artist that I work with, Joshua Ledette.
That was awesome.
He actually was singing with Booker T.
Yeah, that was super cool. I got to meet Josh's family.
Absolutely. Shout out to Josh Ledette and his family, his mom, his sister.
Is it Jackie? Is that his mother's name?
His mom, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, that was awesome. It's always good to meet new people. And Take 6 had a special visitor.
Well, before I get to that, I'm going to apologize for the way I might be sniffling in the mic today, or might sneeze or anything. I have a little cold, so
right, and you will be sleeping on the couch. Sympathy. I'm glad you brought that up here.
And also, I also need to apologize, Tony, if you could slide this over every now and then that I can see the clock, the running show time.
It's 8 minutes and 37 seconds, Dave.
Ooh,
39,
40,
41,
then Marla,
42.
You're the clock master today.
43, 44, 45. You don't want me to count it out like that?
No, not like that. No, thank you.
Anyway, so the last show, which was really a treat, that Take 6 did in Honolulu, they got word that Dr. Dre was on island and wanted to come see the show. He did. It was interesting for us because it really was the collision of two musical legends, Take 6 and Dr. Dre, coming together. Super, super, super humble and nice guy. It was good to be able to make his acquaintance.
After the show, we hung out with him at the studio, so it was very cool. So there you go.
Let's go out.
Look, there's the picture.
There it is. Let's go out on our mood songs.
Please.
Tony, hit me.
When you're giving your all, seems like you can't make it through. Child, you just stand when there's nothing left to do.
Give me a call, my love will last forever. I'm on your side. I will never.
You're listening to the Marla and Dave radio show on the Universal Broadcast Network. Current events, pop culture, the hot topics of the day. It's time for MaD News on the Marla and Dave radio show. Ladies and gentlemen, Marla and Dave.
I remember, don't move. Today we're breaking our silence about mental illness, but right now we're going to get to the news. And Dave, we usually cover 3 news stories that just snap out at us. I'm gonna turn this over today because I'm gonna be honest with you. I am so sick and tired of I don't even like to hear I don't want you to say Trump in cards. I don't want you to say, I don't want to hear Trump at all. I don't want to hear Trump.
But you keep saying it.
So you go ahead and hit this one.
But I guess earlier
45
this week, Trump literally just completely confused the GOP by literally making a deal with the Democrats to actually keep the government open and running, and literally got $15 billion for aid for FEMA and for the victims. And quite honestly, might be the only thing I was so shocked that he did the deal with Chuck Schumer. By literally, it seemed like a great thing to do, but I'm still sitting here thinking to myself, this can't be, there's got to be a hook somewhere. There's something fishy going on here somewhere. So, but the funny thing about it is, so he called Chuck Schumer up. Chuck Schumer reported that he got a call from Donald Trump, and he said, hey, this is so great. Here's what, do you watch Fox News? Of course, Chuck Schumer says, not really. He says, well, they're praising you, meaning me, and on your stations, of course, he's probably meant MSNBC and CNN, they're praising me. This is great. So it seemed like his reasons were a little askew for doing trying to get some praise.
Today we're talking about mental illness. Exactly. Let's move on to the next news story, which is parenting. There's a mom who refused to let her daughter be taught because by a overweight teacher. She said the teacher is fat and this teacher is not going to teach my child.
She was a British journalist named Hillary Freeman, and literally as she was looking for a nursery school, when she found a good school, found out that the lady was overweight and said no.
But can I say this? I read the article and something kind of jumped out at me that I never thought that I would support. One of the things that concerned this mother wasn't a surface shallow issue. It was about the teacher's labored breathing and her inability to quickly move about the classroom on a safety level, dealing with small children. And you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. There are certain jobs, you shouldn't be shamed, but there's certain jobs I think that are not ideal for people who do not. For example, I think an obese flight attendant is a problem. You have to get up and down small aisles, and you're there in the case of an emergency for safety. So that's something to consider. There's the health issue with being obese. It's not just about being able to fit into a bikini.
So you support the lady's decision?
I support it if those are her true decisions, not just because she's fat shaming. I don't believe in body shaming, but I believe that I want to know that somebody's going to be able to function in the best capacity for my child.
And of course, the big news this weekend was Hurricane Irma. Right on the heels of the hurricane down in Texas, Harvey. Hurricane Irma was literally supposed to be, I guess it was the biggest hurricane in quite some time.
It brewed as the biggest hurricane.
Level 5.
Blessings for all of us that what it was needing on the back end for those outer bands.
And a little
there was a dry spot that didn't allow it to pick up water. And so once the front came through and the eye came through, it pretty much piddled out, which is a good thing because it was scary to look at. It was the size of Texas.
Nevertheless, our thoughts and prayers are with the people of Florida and still with the people in Texas.
26 people, I believe, passed away between the Caribbean and
at least
Florida.
9 dead here in Florida.
And there's millions of people that are without power.
And hopefully that number won't rise. But at least 6 million without power. So it's a devastating event, and our thoughts are with them.
Global warming, what?
Yeah, isn't that
something
funny?
To consider.
Those in the GOP saying now is not the time to talk about global warming. It's like after a terrorist attack saying now is not the time to talk about counterterrorism.
Anyway, that's the MaD News. We'll be right back with the show.
This ain't your mama's radio show. Can you handle the truth? Then get ready for a real radio experience. Ladies and gentlemen, Marla and Dave.
All right, the number to call in, 323-524-2599. Here we go.
Wow. First of all, let me just start by saying that just a prayer that whatever it is that we discuss here today, I don't know how to do anything other than to be transparent, and that it's received in the spirit that my heart truly feels it, which is to bring not just an awareness, but to start a conversation and to actually connect with people who are suffering in the same way that we are suffering. And I'm also going to say that, one of the reasons that I think it's extra hard for me to have these kind of conversations, because Dave and I are actually two very different people. We love equally, and we love hard, and we love the same as parents, but his approach is different, and out of respect, I'm usually very outspoken, but I try to take the best of all the advice that's always given to me in love, and make the wisest decisions, because the truth be told, what I want most in my life with my children is to be beneficial to them, to help them be as productive as they can be, and to help them grow as individuals based on who they are. So my goal is not to expose them to a point where it severs our relationship and I render myself ineffective as far as my first concern, which is my relationship to them. So
we'll come back to some of those questions, but why don't you bring us everybody up to speed with what we're actually doing?
Okay, so the reason that I'm breaking my silence at this point, some of you saw me in a very vulnerable, tearful moment online recently, and my first video that I deleted after talking to a trusted friend, I was in a rage about Brandy, and I named her, and the influence that she had knowing that our son was suffering from mental illness, and despite whatever her issues are, which are clearly equally deep, but and I will say that I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to diagnose her, and this isn't about her. I'm explaining what brought me to the breaking point. And what brought me to the breaking point was so many people I started thinking about as I laid in my bed every night, thinking about her influence unwinding our son through just the contact. And despite me having many conversations and asking, and as if I could plead with somebody who was clearly not well or imbalanced.
Well, just to fill in the gap a little bit, we had worked long and hard. We've talked many times about our son's struggle with drugs and addiction.
Right.
He, to his credit, worked very hard to get himself completely clean. Then on the back end of that, we had to work even harder to actually deal with mental illnesses that he had on board. And we had worked hard to literally get him into treatment, get him compliant with treatment. And I don't know if Mimi's here, and we're going to talk to her about that a little later in the show, but to get someone who is mentally ill, who doesn't think or doesn't understand that they need the treatment.
They live in a different reality.
To get them to become compliant is literally a labor of love and trust, and to develop that relationship with us, his parents and caregivers, so that he would trust us when he doesn't feel like he needs to.
Right.
That was a tremendous struggle.
That was a struggle in itself, and there was compliance for 2 years until that scenario came. But what drove me in that is.
So, but what you're saying is Brandy's influence is what caused.
Oh yeah, she was
want to question compliance.
She was upfront with questioning us about some of the requirements that we had, and he doesn't want to take his meds, and blah 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 blah. The bottom line is, and despite us saying, "Hey, fall back. This is our family, and as long as he's in our community and we are living together, when he's on his own, he can take any route he wants to take." But essentially, that ended up being where, unbeknownst to David and I, our son was discarding his meds. We had no idea. And as the diagnosis really flipped between bipolar mania and we now know bipolar mania and schizoaffective disorder. So the combination of the whole thing with the highs and the lows, and then to add to that the delusions and the grandeur, and being the best of everybody in the world knows him and things of the sort, that supercharged, unchecked him off of meds came to a very explosive moment in our household, despite being told. And the thing for me that really got me was the last thing I said to her was, this is no longer a discussion I'm going to have with you. What you don't know could cost us our lives. Because I went with my mother to a mental health conference, and that was the first time I saw the video with Senator Craig Deeds, and his son's diagnosis was identical to mine. And he woke up one morning, he saw his son, he said, "Hey, buddy, how'd you sleep?" And he turned to feed the animals on his farm, and he had just gotten out of a hole that they couldn't hold him in Virginia because there were no beds or whatever the case was. And his mother begged and said, please, he's super, super sick. Do not release him. And he did, stabbed his father 36 times and then shot himself and killed himself. The dad survived. His son died. And you can look that up on YouTube. But that rocked my soul. And I ended up sharing that with her and saying, listen, we love you and you can do what you have to do. And if it were just me and Dave, this wouldn't even be a conversation. But because there's this young man who D's soul has always been, I used to call him my joy boy. He's an incredible human being. He's gentle at the core, but when all this other stuff gets going, you don't know what you're hearing and what you're listening to. And essentially it came down to a physical altercation between David and DJ and myself shortly after that. Matter of fact, probably four days or so, which involved, if it were not by the grace of God, I believe that, it could have actually cost Dave, if not his life. He would have been in critical condition.
Absolutely. Well, legally speaking, I just got a little text from our lawyer. We don't actually blame Brandy for DJ's situation. But what we do is we're very disappointed in her influence as far as being part of derailing our son from his path.
Right. This like I said, and I'm also not here to diagnose, but what I am saying is that as a friend, and I'm just going to keep it all the way clear, that whatever the issues are, when it comes to my family, I'm extremely protective. So that video that you saw initially that I took down was the impetus as I lay here day in and day out, frightened about what I don't know about his behavior at this point. You can't make him comply. And because we love him so much, we still want to help and we still want to be connected and we still want to be caregivers. But then I'm thinking, because it's so tricky, people don't know. You run into people and they have no idea. And I watch her in particular and turn leagues of fans on people and saying things that are so mean and cruel in support of something that you have no idea. So there are those who are going to disregard it no matter what. But as a credible voice and as somebody that's been around and in association with her for 15 years, it was time for me to speak up, not just about her, but about anyone who's suffering. And it just so happens that this affected our family in such an adverse way that I can't shut up anymore. I cannot be quiet anymore. So right.
Again, I don't want to confuse those watching the show and listening to the show today. We're specifically talking about our dealings and challenges with mental illness in our family. And I guess what Marla is saying is that Brandy had an effect in influencing our son off his path
based on access that we had. Okay, so let's
that's the truth. But the question is, why now? Why are you doing it now?
I'm doing it now because it has reached a critical point where so many things that I'm now understanding on so many levels, and I used to be the person who didn't understand how someone ends up on the street. I didn't get that. And what I know now is anybody over the age of 18 years old has, the ability to say yes or no to treatment, to actually control their own situation or let their situation be out of control, but the detriment and the fallout within the family for those who also caregive. So the suffering is twofold. It's suffering for the person who's been diagnosed, because I can only imagine being trapped inside your head and nothing you think lines up in the world. And then the person who, like I said earlier, I want to begin the conversation today with pointing out what that looks like, with pointing out what we recognize when they were children. So I want to be able to do that and be able to share that information from inside the truth of what we live with every single solitary day. That's the thing, because I want to free other people, and I want us to begin to bind together and come up with solutions. So you can recognize it, number one, and we can stop being afraid to talk about it, and we can put the right spin on it. So it's not shaming those who are mentally ill, but we need to get more support for those who are actually trying to help. We're a rare breed of parent. We have a grown person in our midst that we're still trying to grapple with how we're going to deal with this. And to be totally honest with you, for me, it's time to get out of the way. Everybody has to make their own decision, but it's so frightening because you can't manage it. So that's what we need to talk about. And I feel like that, again, I said this earlier, as I hate to put race on it, but as a black community, as a Christian community, we don't want to have this conversation. We act like it doesn't exist. Oh, it's not us, or it's something else, or they're just that, and we're shamed.
Well, I think some of the words help create the stigma. When you use terms like crazy, psycho, that type of thing, it has such a negative connotation. And we recently, I guess about maybe a year ago, I came across a book called Brain Differences. To me, and those, it kind of helps to take away the stigma. There are so many people who did so many great things throughout history that were technically mentally ill. And Beautiful Mind was a good example. And the author said she likes to refer to it as brain different. Just their brains are different from ours, and which allows them, if within the realm of therapy, sometimes or the right environment, to literally be able to think of a solution to a problem in a different way, to approach something that people haven't been able to deal with in a different way.
Well, they access a whole different side of their brain, which is interesting. I mean, in other words, we have stops. There are things that we have. The
frontal lobe sort of controls a check on the emotional. Yeah. Which happens more of the, Mimi can help us with that, some of the sides of the brain, is that true, Mimi?
Yeah, you're going to have to speak into your mic, though.
From my understanding, the frontal lobe actually is a check and balance over the emotion.
That's logic. Frontal is logic. That's where your logic comes in.
Right, and that's where years ago, people used to get a lobotomy.
Right
up through the eye.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to break down the stigma as well as parents who are scared to share, who are scared to speak. That stigma, the embarrassment that you feel, and you want to act like it's something else. And I will lead us probably out of this segment with this particular reality. I said this earlier on my live feed. When you give birth to a baby, if your baby is born with a handicap and you're prepared to manage their function or lack thereof from birth. But in cases like schizophrenia and things of the sort, there's a point where they fracture for whatever the reasons are. And you're dealing with something that you can relate to, someone you can relate to that you've watched grow, something that is living within your life's norms, and then all of a sudden it isn't. That adjustment to bring them back, that fight to say, don't you see it's different? It's not. It's like, you weren't born blind. All of a sudden, you didn't even see the accident happen. You just wake up one morning and they can no longer see what you're doing.
And I think that's part of the struggle. Part of the struggle is still trying to deal with those in the family who are not themselves anymore. So we're still dealing in the paradigm of the old relationship that you had with the person who was within normal a framework of behavior and thinking, to now this a different framework in thinking and behavior that you can't really relate to in the same way. So it's a struggle, at least for me.
Right.
It's a struggle to try to say, why are you doing this? Why are you saying these things? Why are you behaving this way? As if you should be like you were before the fracture.
Right. Except the thing about it is we live in two alternate realities, and that's the part to me that's hard. What's even harder is you think your brain, your parenting, your brain wants to act and perform daily based on who you knew this person to be as healthy. But the unpredictability of this person, it's so hard to separate and say, yeah, well, this is my son. Yeah, but my son can also be very dangerous and very violent. And I'm unprepared to know what's going to happen at any given time. I'm unprepared to be assured that I know what conversation could or could not put me in actual physical peril. I don't know, because I don't know how to deal with that. And even though I know how to love, I'm not a health professional. So to me, I feel like I'm drowning to try to figure out how to come up to the top and even stay treading water emotionally in this situation, because it's scary. I've seen scary, and scary didn't cost me everything this time, but scary could cost me the next time, and I don't know when it's coming. So to me, it feels like a time bomb. It feels like being in a confined area with an emotional time bomb that could actually destroy me. That, my friend, is a frightening thing for me. That's my greatest fear.
That's a very frightening situation. And as I heard you speaking, I'm really struggling to figure out, how do you put those two things together? How do you take that reality and also the need to try to remove the stigma? Because to me, that's something that no one wants to deal with in a normal situation. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No one would want to deal with what you just stated, that you're dealing with, that we're dealing with, and yet we're trying to remove the stigma. It's a little conundrum there.
But you have. I don't think anything starts without the truth. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, listen up. Learn something. 26 years of marriage from two unique perspectives equals 52 years of relationship experience.
Excuse me, that's 58 years? Oops, I made a boo-boo.
It's time for Ask Marla and Dave. Answers to your questions about life, love, and relationship based on Marla and Dave's real-life experience. It's about to get real. Ask Marla and Dave.
All right, the Ask Marla and Dave segment is the segment where you kind of skip right through all of the red tape, so to speak, and your question gets handled right here on the show. You log on to our home, www.marlandave.com, click the Ask Marla and Dave tab, and submit your question. We get to it right here on the show. Marla, what's the question for today?
Hi, Marla and Dave. Just a quick question. How do I stop my family from asking for money without damaging our relationship? My husband and I have been blessed with ample financial resources as a result of hard work and great planning. Good for you. That's how it happens. Both of our families have received financial assistance from us through the years. I'm coming to the realization that our help is not help, it's a hindrance. They are able-bodied adults. They are able-bodied adults who won't take our advice, only our money. The last request was denied, and now they're no longer speaking to us. I want to say good riddance, but the truth is it really bothers me. Any ideas on how to stop the handouts and save our family relationship? Signed, not a bank. Go ahead. You go first.
Well, I think the first thing, if you are starting to be resentful, the relationship is already being damaged. So the first thing you have to do is deal with what you're able to do and what you're able not to not do. Specifically, not just when it comes to finances, but also emotionally.
I say that, you're definitely being a hindrance. And I think that the same way, the principles, as sounds like, as to how you and your husband got where you are the principles that you need to teach your family. Because sometimes when you don't see an effort, all of us need help. I've gotten financial help from friends before and family to bridge the gap, but not to just rest on being a dependent fully on somebody else to just continue to fund your life. So I think that if the family relationship on the other side is only based on you giving money, then you need to actually reconsider and have that discussion with your family and let them know how you feel. And then shut your wallet, open your heart.
Well, I would say, to add to that, one of the things that we do in our group is we have to say something tough. It became a joke to say in love. So really, if love is your actual motivation, no matter what you're going to do, whatever your response is going to be, the love can be felt.
And so there you have it. If you ask us anything, we'll tell you honestly. At least we'll give you our opinions. Hope that helps you.
Back to the show.
Bye.
Intelligent, fun, and super real. This is the Marla and Dave Radio Show.
All right, again, the number to call in, 323-524-2599. Like Marla said, this is a rough topic for us to discuss for various reasons. Number one, it's extremely painful. As Marla said, it's something that is extremely, not just scary, it's terrifying to deal with. And it's hard to talk to other people about it most of the time because they just cannot comprehend the depth that we're actually dealing with in this situation. And people who have dealt with mental illness from one side or the other, they know what we're talking about because people just don't talk about it. The stigma is that real. And part of the reason why you can't talk about it is because we used to talk to our friends about it and they were like, it's not that bad.
Or
it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Or if they're a Christian, just pray.
Pray for them. So
like, really?
We're going to pray it away.
Well, I pray some medication jumps into the mouth.
Okay, so let me say this.
And
again.
I'm not going to poo-poo prayer, but
no. But it also has there's a reality to the material. There's an actual tangible result or fallout from what the situation is.
When someone has heart disease, you don't not go to the doctor and simply pray. You pray and go to the doctor.
Right. And again, and Dave asked me, and Francis is here, Mark Cooper. A lot of you have joined us, Mark Kibble, Jacqueline Kelly. Welcome to everybody who's in our chat rooms, and I'm glad you guys joined us in support of this topic. Also in the UBN chat room.
Well, we're doing some construction to the UBN website. It's being updated, the new and wonderful UBN, www.ubnradio.com. So the chat room's not available at UBN today, but it will be pretty soon.
And Desmond Pierre-Louis just joined us. All right, so let me say this. I have to just say that because I want to get into talking about what it's like to live inside this illness. And when I say live in the illness, that is where I reside right now on a daily basis. I'm going to bring my mother in on this particular segment of the show to talk to us about the characteristics and identifying different mental illnesses and even different personality disorders because they are different. And I know recently, and we do a lot of study because of the history we've had with our family and our children. And I've asked a lot of questions. In my family, I want to know how much of it is genetic, how much of it is environmental, what induces and what brings these types of things forward. And I want to be sure that anybody who's listening understands this. You may not be me, and you may not be. I've got several private messages today. You may not be called to speak about this so blunt and so publicly, but I want you to know that don't be ashamed because we are all imperfect. That's the fact. We're not. Nobody here gets.
What is the implication to the private message that they
have issues too, they want to get brave enough to be able to come forward, but maybe it's just not meant for you to make a public platform of it. But I tell you what, if public and private come together under the same cause, with the same heart and the same love in mind, I'm telling you we can make a dent.
The reason why I asked that question is because before the show ends, we're going to give some resources that you can go seek help from either side of the issue, whether you're dealing with the issue yourself or whether you're caring for somebody or you in a relationship with someone who's dealing with mental illness.
So, Mom, let me just say this. Again, I want to just start by appreciating who you are and what you've been as in the way of a gentle light from the time our children were very young, in saying there's some things here that aren't quite right, and you just kind of let us, we did not receive counsel very early because it was easier for us to hear, oh no, they're just going through typical growth thing. Oh no, they're fine, or whatever the case is. So tell us identify for us when someone says that a person has been diagnosed schizoaffective. What are some of the things that you will expect to see with that?
Well, anytime you hear schizo,
you have to bring that to you can bring it. There you go.
It means that they're out of touch with reality. And you can identify, they begin to, what we say professionally, respond to external stimuli. So they're hearing things and responding to that. And when you become a professional and trained, you can kind of, before it gets really blatant, you can kind of look at them and see that they're trying to decipher if it's you or if it's the voices. Now, one of the things that I've told Marla and David, despite the fact that we now are dealing with just blatant voices all the time, you have to listen and decipher what it is that these voices are saying. And that kind of governs your immediate safety. Now, if the voices are happy, what we say professionally is it's good.
It's company. It's like an invisible friend.
The voices are keeping them company.
Right.
They're laughing, they're talking, but you have to pay attention, because when the voices become evil and mean, you never know how that's going to turn. You then become imperiled.
And maybe you don't have to keep holding the mic now that we got you close to it.
So then on the affective side, as far as the personality disorders go, those are very, very difficult.
And so what would you identify as somebody with a personality disorder in comparison to somebody who is suffering from actual schizo?
Well, people with mood swings, people that are, their personality is what we call labile. It's 1 minute they're happy, 1 minute you just never know how you're going to find them. Are they going to be angry? Are they going to be happy?
Does anger and rage come with personality disorder?
It does.
When you say a personality disorder, you're saying all personality disorders or specific personality disorders?
Well, there are specific ones, and then this rage and anger is a portion. I mean, people with that affect, there is something about that is a part of a personality disorder. Because they don't control it. You never know what's going to trigger it. What will trigger it today may not trigger it tomorrow.
And what's always strange to me is that, specifically with personality disorders, is that it seems like sometimes you can control it, and then sometimes it seems like you're not going to control it.
Like the person who's affected, sometimes they seem to be able to keep themselves together, which makes you feel like that they're just playing games, and because there's a high amount of manipulation involved in that.
Well, that's part of the disorder, and that is gauged by the person that they're dealing with. If there has been some success in the past with anger and manipulation, then you're going to see that. So a lot of it rests in the people that are being dealt with and their borderline.
The one
their borders.
The one who is suffering, are they conscious of this manipulation, or is it just a result of their disorder? Are they consciously saying, is it a plan I'm going to manipulate, or is manipulation a survival tactic?
No, there are times when it's a plan.
So they're diabolical.
Yes, there are times when it's a plan.
So are there times, though, when it's, I can't help myself?
Yes, there are those times, too.
Yeah, see, that's what was confusing to me.
Angela Bard Towner here is saying bipolar ? I don't think bipolar is not
a mood disorder.
Well, bipolar basically is a mood disorder.
But that's considered a mental illness, treated by medication.
Correct.
Controlled.
And actually, in a hospital setting, we think manics are fun if they're in a controlled environment, because they're happy. But on their own, they're very destructive, because the sky is the limit. I mean, they will spin. They do everything to the extreme.
Well, there was, in the book that I was referencing before, Brain Differences, she said specifically about the chapter when it comes to bipolar, and I think also schizophrenia, is that there is a phase right before it gets to a critical manic phase where they're extremely creative, and it seems like, and that's why a lot of them don't like to take their medication, because there's a time period that they're on the way up to over the top critical mania, to where they're productive, they feel great, they can do things that typically they would think that they can't do outside of this phase, and so that's why they don't want to take their medication. Is that true?
Yeah, but that is the risk of all mental illness, because it takes you out of the realm of what makes you feel normal. It doesn't feel normal to them. And so I'm going to say between 80 and 90% of the people that suffer from mental illness, the big risk is medication. And I want to inject right here. There are only 3 diagnoses or 3 situations that will take mental illness out of your hands. And that is a danger to self, a danger to others, or gravely disabled. And gravely disabled is a very gray area, because what that simply means is you have everything available to you and you're not able to use it. So those people kind of slip under the radar. And there's so few mental facilities available.
Access to a bed or a facility
yes.
is extremely limited.
Correct. And so you really have to actually commit the act. We say gesturing, and we say what is an actual attempt.
Well, we know, because
we've called the police several times,
yeah.
and the police pretty much told us that. But at the same time, which is part of my issue, you feel helpless because the system almost says, hey, we're here to help you, but when you try to call on the system, we're not available. You're on your own. Until something possibly fatal has already happened.
Which you don't get the help. You don't get the help until after the heinous act has occurred.
Correct. Which in some cases cost people their lives. This is what I'm saying. Like, in other words, you can't say you're.
That's like saying, why don't we call the cardiac specialist after you die of a heart attack?
Right.
That makes no sense.
So it's the system that has our hands tied.
So how for parents listening, how soon we have a caller, Tony? Caller, you're on the Marla and Dave show with Marla and Dave. What's your name and where are you calling from? You don't have to say your name if it's an anonymous topic. Hello?
Caller, are you there?
Okay.
Right, we'll
give us a call back. How old? When what is 2 questions. What age can you clearly begin to identify? Hello?
Hey there.
Caller, you're on the Marla and Dave show.
Hello?
Hi. Yeah, can you turn your computer down just a little? We've got some rebound.
Feedback, yeah.
Sure. Hold on 1 second.
That's Lamont. God flam it. He's like a Mimi moth to the flame. Get out of here, Lamont. What do you want?
Well, I want to talk to Mimi, but since you're having a serious show, we'll let that go for now. Okay.
Welcome to the Marla and Dave Show. This is a MaD family friend. This is
Absolutely.
Lamont Baxter calling from Washington, D.C. What's up, Lamont?
So I kind of wanted to give you a little additional, and it's not additional. You guys know what you're talking about, and you've been through this already. From the law enforcement perspective, because I would call in my days that I had a lot of these calls, and we would have to come assist the families with somebody in there, and we would call it, taking them in for mental observation. And Mimi's, right as usual. There had to be a clear and present danger to themselves or somebody else in order for us to even intervene. And a lot of the families couldn't seem to understand why it was that way. Well, from the law enforcement perspective, you just got to remember that that's what the police are there for. That whole thing about protect and serve, it's reactive to anyone that breaks the law.
Right.
And so that's why the police are ill-equipped to deal with these types of situations. And you're exactly right. It's the same as if any other quote-unquote crime. You got to have evidence, because those are the rules before you can move in and do anything. And that's the challenge with dealing with folks that have mental illness or mental challenges, because the police are completely and totally ineffective. And the majority of them are ill-trained, if trained at all, to deal with them at all. They overreact and turn a bad situation into possibly a tragic situation, especially in our community. So that brings you full circle back to, okay, what do we do?
Right.
It helps to have a diagnosis that you can guide them to call the pet team to come. The only thing is, when you call the pet team first.
For the listeners, maybe, what does PET stand for?
It's a psychiatric evaluation team. That's what that stands for. But if you call them first, you will be growing gray hairs before they get there. So you call the police as a quick intervention in order to solicit the help of the pet team. And then once they get into the system, there are only a few people that can do a legal hold. Each state calls it a different thing. They can be held against their will for 72 hours. And then after that,
they're on the street.
You're in trouble again if the person decides that they don't want to take medication, or they can be held for 14 days if they're still flagrantly
violent,
psychotic, or suicidal. But otherwise, they're always on their own to accept or reject treatment. And so that is the bind that we're in. That's the bottom line.
If that's the way it is in California, that's also the way it is here in D.C., and I know it's the way in Maryland and Virginia, because those two states border us, and we interact with those law enforcement agencies all the time with these kind of situations.
Now, Lamont, you brought up something else, though. You said that a lot of times the officers aren't educated or trained to deal with this type of thing, which seems to reflect in our personal situation, because we had officers come out more than once.
3 times.
Different officers, and they would all say different things regarding the law.
But the problem is that the last visit that we called with when he was threatening physically, when they got there, first of all, he has an uncanny, I think, we did our children a grave injustice giving them so much intelligence, but he has a grave, uncanny ability to immediately go from rage to, hey, man, what's up? And he presents
part of the manipulation.
Right. He presents so intelligently that the police stood in our living room and empowered him by saying, look, let's just be real. We can't remove you. And what's going to have to happen is you need to go get a restraining order. And then once you get the restraining order, now you're going to have to file a formal eviction, which I'm in real estate. That's going to take 3 months, essentially. And I I don't have it. I have nothing left. I can't, so that's where we are. We have called the police 3 times, and we have pictures of a horrible fight that went down, damage to property, damage to our physical bodies, but not enough to actually make it where, it's an immediate, oh yeah.
It has to be current and ongoing at the time of
the fight. We have to be in fight process.
Right.
All right. Anyway,
Lamont, thanks for calling
us, man.
No, my pleasure. Mimi, I'll talk to you a little later.
Okay. Goodbye, Lamont. Okay. You have to always cut him off quickly, Tony. He's always trying to get a little feel in verbally on my mother. Get back, boy. Anyway, we're here breaking our silence on mental illness, the truth about what's happening with our family, and it's a touchy subject, but we're glad we have my mom with us, and we're going to talk about some resources when we come back. So stay tuned. Don't move. We'll be right back.
It's time for the Marla and Dave Doghouse. Marla has something that should put Dave in the doghouse. Dave has something that should put Marla in the doghouse. You decide who gets a biscuit and who gets busted and ends up in the doghouse.
Okay, Dave.
No, you go ahead. You go first.
You go ahead, Dave.
Well,
you saw me looking into the distance.
There's so many doghouse offenses that Marla has. She has offended in so many ways these past couple of weeks month that we've been gone. I guess the main one is I'm literally physically injured because we were on vacation in Kauai, and I'm carrying out steaks and veggies to go on the grill.
You need to really get a grip.
And Marla actually kicked her slipper at me. And
flip-flop. For those of you who aren't Hawaiian, it is a slipper.
But flip-flop for the rest of you. I was walking down a flight of stairs outdoors at the condo into the parking lot, and I fell down 3 stairs, Tony. I went to how I used to fall down into a push-up position. Well, I did that from 3 stairs up onto the parking lot, and I had to brace myself with one hand. Now my hand is injured. I couldn't do a push-up now if I wanted to because I can't support it. And Marla then tries to start propaganda like 45, sort of like President Trump.
I told you not to say.
To the extent of trying to make people believe that I did it to myself.
You tried to
and
kill
that
yourself.
She wasn't involved.
You did try to kill yourself on vacation.
See what I mean?
It was
there
sad.
Go.
And
45 what?
And to be totally honest with you, I just want to tell you that it was
Trump's first wife was Marla. It's true.
It was just 2 steps. That's not how you get it done, son. There was shipwreck right down the street. You could have just jumped off shipwreck. Mm-hmm. Just saying.
It was 3 steps.
The fact
by
that
the way.
That doesn't matter. Your
was
legs
I
are
injured?
You did,
but
I
was
did
bleeding from several positions in my body.
Anyway, I'd like to counter Dave's doghouse with the fact that
and didn't really apologize. The first thing out of her mouth was guttural laughter.
Let's just deal with it. Dave did fall 3 steps down. If you guys want to put me into the doghouse because Dave can't keep his balance because he's a scary startler.
Would I have fallen without your input?
David, you are scared of a slipper.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
There's not even any animals that can hurt you there.
Really?
Anyway, buddy. Well, you know what?
See what I mean?
Next time.
You're putting yourself in the
doghouse.
Work
on your core.
See what I mean?
Be stronger in your core.
Putting
that wouldn't have happened
right
to
you.
I'm going to go in the doghouse.
What's your doghouse offense?
That I'm going to just jump in the doghouse and shut the door, even though you're it's all good. It's whatever. You know what? I'll be back with the doghouse offense next week. For now, I'm actually looking forward to eating the bone. Give it to me. Boom. Slam. Next.
Nice.
On with the show.
What's the action?
You'll laugh. You'll learn. You'll learn. Mm-hmm. You'll get mad.
Shut up.
You'll get happy. But you won't be bored. This is the Marla and Dave radio show on the Universal Broadcast Network.
So, Mimi, I asked you the question about how soon you can recognize mental imbalances or brain differences in children. That was the first question. And the second question is, give me a breakdown, if you can, about the genetic impact. I mean, the genetic imprint that actually festers and fosters mental illness in our children, for whatever you know about that. Well, so how soon and how come?
you can begin to see some antisocial behavior very early on. 3, 4. You can begin to see some sexual deviation very early on. I used to always think, it was always taught pretty much that those things were acquired, but not so. And you can begin to see, I mean, I from a personal standpoint, I could begin to see some familial identification at 2, you know, with crying and just what we call dissociation. You know, you leave and then there's a dissociative reaction. In other words, the parent comes back and there's no
emotional
attachment,
sign of joy that, oh, my parent is back. It's
which you are their whole identity at that age, which is very interesting. Which, yeah,
but that seems to be, is that more on the mood disorder?
But we're talking about mental illness as
in general.
Which I was gonna say, the one thing I can link to being closely associated to both those who suffer from personality disorders and mental illness, the one thing that I know about both that I've recognized is there's an inability to actually, number one, reason. It's not about everybody being, you know, disconnected, but there's no reasoning. There's no sense of personal accountability ever. It's always somebody else's issue. That's the first thing. There's a narcissistic root to the whole thing. Everything spins around this center that doesn't have the ability to either empathize or consider others. That's what I start to realize.
That's all a part of the personality.
Yeah, that's more. I was going to say it seemed like a personality disorder characteristic.
It's difficult. You don't usually see psychotic.
I see that. Honestly,
see when I look back at it, when I look back in our experience,
not psychosis.
We deal with 2 different sides of the spectrum, because I also noticed that in our son, he really didn't experience pain. That was very strange.
Yeah, that was strange. You brought that up when he was young.
He did not experience pain, and I was like, man, this is weird. Man, I literally by mistake burned his mouth with an overheated bottle,
and he didn't even cry.
He didn't even respond to it. He used to fall, and where we would think we would go
still for a minute, like, oh, and then he'd be
and he would just react as if nothing ever happened. Well, so would that be part of it as well?
In a mature person who's been identified with psychosis, pain is a whole different thing. So you're bringing up something that I had not heard, you know, in that realm, but they don't experience pain
the way that we do
at all.
They experience, but not in the way we do.
Correct. It's very different. But
and we also experience the lack of the disassociation from relationship as well. So.
There's a question here, too, that in line with this. Oh, my goodness. How do I scroll back down? Because I'm not doing a good job. That was asked. Hold on. Keep going.
Marla's looking for that. We said that we were going to literally give you some resources, or at least a resource, if you're dealing with this. And something that I actually, because of this show, I think I might have heard of the term, but I hadn't actually been to the website. It's NAMI, which is an organization that is really designed to not only help, but give you a place to actually sort of air and express some of the things that you're going through with people who are going through this similar situation.
It's a national association of mental illness.
Yes, and their website is NAMI.org, which is N as in Nancy, A, msandmaryI.org.
So Desmond asked the question I think is a really good question to you, Mimi. What are strategies to help someone stay on their meds, especially if they're an adult? Is there a strategy?
If they are involved in taking medication, I mean, if they buy into it at all, we now have a mode of administration that they can be given their medication monthly. And so
a depot shot.
Yes, that helps tremendously.
It's not always depot. Right?
Yes,
is it always Depakote, or is that some of the different term?
No, that's just
an administrative.
The prefix for whatever it is.
Oh, okay.
That's the route of administration. So that's one of the forms of compliance that we now do, because you never know. People that are taking medication orally, they cheat, they spit it out, they do all those things. And if you can get them involved at all, usually a monthly administration works. And I might interject, the outcome for psychosis, if you can get a person involved in treatment, is much greater, or the outcome is much better than for a personality disorder. Because psychosis responds famously to medication, and the outcome is good if you can get them to be compliant.
Okay, there's a resounding need for you to answer the second part of the question I asked you. Several people are saying, please, can you address the question regarding genetics and how they play into mental illness? So, and again, please discuss the connection between genetics and mental illness. Thanks. So,
there is definitely, and I hesitate to give you data as to if it's through
the mother, the father,
mother or the father. But there is, if you look at it, there is definitely a genetic
marker.
Marker, and there are some things that are more transmitted through the female than the male, but there's definitely a genetic connection.
You and I were talking recently, and the one thing that you said that I found that, you said when it comes to borderline personality disorder, people don't diagnose men with personality disorders.
Well,
as often.
No, not ever.
Ever?
You have never, ever heard of a man with a diagnosis of borderline.
Oh, but you mean borderline in specific?
Borderline.
You said personality disorder.
They just don't.
The same.
They don't. Men don't get
labeled.
They don't get that label.
But it acts the same in men and women.
It's the same. Identical.
Do they label them as other personality disorders, like narcissistic personality disorder,
they
or
single out
sociopathic?
They single out a part of the scenario. As I don't know how the audience knows, but borderline involves many diagnoses. It involves bipolar. It's to the edge of every diagnosis. Right. It's to the edge of psychosis, affective disorder. 5 or 6 or 7 diagnoses fit within that circle. Men never get that. And if you remember years ago, there was a movie, Sybil.
And the same with by the way, the character Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction. She was her character. I read from that it was designed. It was actually centered around a borderline. Also, Jodi Arias, in real life, the one who just stabbed up
Forrest
and went
to jail. The girl that he was
she was a depressive borderline, which is the difference between those who rage and those who actually are a borderline. A lot of the times, from what I understand, some of them have a you hate me, oh you think I'm ugly, and they're just there's this thing of that, and then the other side of that is rage. Just that everything is they attack absolutely everything, and there's zero. It's all based on emotion. There's a full-on emotional response to everything that ignores, defies, and never even considers reason. Never.
Well, that's why most psychiatrists will not treat, if they won't treat borderline.
80% of the health community will say no to a borderline because they're usually
they will not.
Well,
because what I read is
it has to be a lifetime therapy.
Right,
well, not only that,
they said that there's no.
Not only that, it's risky for them to have them as a patient and to have them commit suicide. You never know exactly which border to treat.
Right.
And so you have many different things going on at the same time. And to find a medication for each one of those, or to know which thing is presenting at any given time, it's very difficult.
And Mark Cooper is right. He said men usually are labeled as antisocial or sociopath.
Correct.
Yeah.
They don't get the label of a borderline. And so, yeah, that's...
Well, that's what I was asking you. Do they not get the borderline label, so they're labeled with other personality disorders, but not borderline?
But singular ones
right.
that fit in that circle,
right.
not borderline.
The whole clump.
Not the comprehensive.
No.
Right.
Which is interesting because, you know, experiencing all of this at different points in our lives, I've come to know as well that the borderline thing is a beast. Because, you, like you said, you can't. There's a famous book that if you want to know about a borderline, number one, if you want to know if somebody around you is affected by borderline, just look up BPD, B like boy, P like Paul, D like dog, symptoms. And it'll come up on your computer. And also there's a book called, that's famous, Stop Walking on Eggshells. And also, I Hate You, Don't Leave Me. So you're either everything to them, and they love you to death, and they make you feel like they love you, and the sky is the limit, or they absolutely despise you, and you're the reason for everything wrong in the world, and they hate you, and they're guttural with their anger.
And one of the things you ask about children, one of the things you see early on is their inability to bond or attach. That's something that you can pick up very early on.
Right. To connect. But Mark Cooper says borderline is toughest demographic to treat. Usually don't see elderly borderlines. They grow out of it or they kill themselves.
Yes.
Well, at least that's a ray of hope.
Well,
that you can grow out of it.
Yeah, well, by the time that happens, in most cases, those of us who are like us will be dead. We just naturally.
A lot of
that's
the
old.
men that are borderlines without the diagnosis, that's what they do. They commit suicide. It's very prevalent.
Or a crime against somebody else that lands them in jail.
Well, suicide is very prevalent among males. That would be, if it was a woman, they would be labeled borderline.
Why do you think that is? Because they can't get any treatment for it, or because they can't, or just it's just so aggressive that they just.
It's just an anomaly that, you know, men like to be in control, and you're out of control.
What is somebody? What can you say to somebody who needs to know what that looks like? So, because here's what I know: 7.2 million people are undiagnosed with borderline. I know that statistically, and that's just based on behaviors that have been reported that have not been diagnosed and people who haven't been treated. So, what is that? What does that look like?
Well, it involves what you started with in the beginning. It involves listening closely, because you will begin to hear statements of hopelessness, helplessness, and people, when it comes from a man, you kind of tend to poo-poo it, cast it aside. So that's one of the cardinal symptoms, and we use the term contract. They won't contract. You can't trust their contracting. You can't trust men to do that.
We're going to come back and deal with that a little bit more, because right there on the NAMI.org, the website, you can learn about all the mental illnesses and the warning signs and what you can look out for, the things that Mamie is talking about. Whew, rough day, a lot to talk about. We'll be right back.
It's time to play the Marla and Dave Love Game. Here are Marla and Dave to explain how it works.
All right, Marla, why don't you introduce the love game?
You know what?
This time?
I need a new love game. I need a love game that has cards that just talk about sex, Tony. I think there should be 3 categories. I think that one should be missionary, one should be doggy, and one should be anal.
Wow.
Just you want to include, Dave. You don't know people.
I said, Marla, you should introduce the MaD Love game.
Sorry. Anyway, this is the
Just
MaD Love
job.
game. This is a game that's created by Dave and myself. This game includes the 3 categories that affect most relationships. We believe all relationships most adversely or
for the better.
For the better. So, sex.
There you go.
Sex, finance, and communication. 3 things. Without those 3 things, you are doomed. Okay? That's Irma has got nothing on those 3 things in your relationship. So Dave is gonna. There's a
by
die.
rolling a single die. Yes.
And on the die, you have the 3 categories that I've just spoken of, and also we have a wild, which is our logo. If you land on the logo when you're playing with a group of friends, you can choose what category that you think that you want to tackle. All questions.
Or the dreaded lose a turn. So we're gonna pass the die to Mimi.
All questions. Mimi, let me tell you, girl. First of all, you live in Vegas. You better get baby a new pair of shoes. Get this, girl. Get it. Throw it. Woo! She got a logo. What do you want, girl?
You get to choose,
money,
Mimi.
communication, or sex. Don't let Dave.
Finance,
don't
communication,
let.
or
Don't let
sex.
Dave influence you.
That MD.
That's our logo.
That's our logo, Marla and Dave.
So you get to pick one of those 3 categories I just told you. You don't need to see.
Oh, I get to pick.
Yeah.
Okay. Money.
Money.
Finance.
Money.
She chooses finance. All right, so Mimi, here is the question.
And let me add that all questions have an actual answer that have been they've been taken from the PEW Research Center.
Absolutely.
As I go.
So Mimi, the question for you
don't
today,
make me kill you.
From the finance category, should a man always pay for a woman when they go on a date?
Now, Mimi, you're single and you don't date people like Lamont Baxter. So when you're out on a date with real men,
Matter of fact, you don't even talk to Lamont Baxter.
we don't even know his name.
Of the world.
Yeah. So, but if you were to come across a man that's much more stellar and worthy than Lamont Baxter, and he took you out, who would pay?
I think it depends on the situation. I don't think that men always need to pay depending on the type of date that it is.
What date would you pay for?
A date that had a business label.
More of a business meeting?
Is that a date?
Like a lunch date.
It could be a lunch date that you were going to talk about business. In other words, I would prefer, until I knew the situation, to pay to avoid any kind of obligation. Nowadays, there's obligation.
That brings up a good point,
You
though,
pay,
Mimi,
you poke.
Because it almost
Poke
seems
and
like
pay.
in a business meeting, you will be considered less than
Well,
if you accept someone paying for it.
I'm rephrasing that and saying, if it was a date, I would need to be more familiar with the situation, and I would prefer to assess paying because of the obligation.
What camera can I look in specifically, Tony? If you are a man who happens to date my mother and I find out that she paid, that's it.
Okay,
on to the next.
Well,
can't make threats on live
the
online,
answer to this
Tony.
question is actually tradition seems to hold true on this one, since it's usually, and things might be changing a little bit, usually the man who initiates the date. Most people feel that the man should pay
I feel
for
like
the
that
date.
whoever asked should pay.
Okay, well, we didn't say that.
Well, no, that's the answer.
But that's the actual answer. There's a real answer.
Okay.
Now, but
there's a
you
further
bring up-
discussion point.
And the further discussion question is: should women expect this?
I'm
I think that's
saying
kinda
that
where
if you
were going,
asked,
Mimi.
whoever asked should pay. If I invite, I should be ready to pay. That's how I feel.
Those are my standards.
Right. So if I invite and I'm single, then I'm on top.
So if this, I was about to say, so if this were a sex card, would that mean that whoever initiates,
you're gonna do it my way.
whoever initiates dominates?
Whoopsh, whoopsh, whoopsh.
That's the MaD Love game, and we had such a lively discussion about this question. We don't really have time to do
Hey,
another
Greg.
one. We're going to get back to the show.
David is a thinker.
I never do anything without thinking about it first.
Marla is a feeler.
I basically wear my personality on my sleeve.
But when Marla and Dave get together, it's like a match dancing with a firecracker. This is the Marla and Dave radio show on the Universal Broadcast Network.
All right before we get back to the show, we're going to actually do a quick poll break. And the poll question for, I guess, automatically usually say last week. And this wasn't
from
last
a month
week,
ago.
So
Here's the last thing we left off with.
The last poll question we had was, should Colin Kaepernick's national anthem protest result in him being blackballed by the NFL? Your options were yes, hashtag fair play, or no, hashtag unnecessary roughness. And one would think that everyone would say no, unnecessary roughness, but there was it's insane. 83% said no, unnecessary roughness, like one would think. 17% said yes, fair play.
Donald Trump is president. On to the next question. That just saw anything wrong now. That's the problem. We're being led by nuts. So all the nuts are speaking up. That's 17%. That's nutland.
The poll question for this week is what, Marla?
Is the increased severity of weather events a result of global warming? Yes, hashtag scientific fact, or no, hashtag political propaganda.
You can access the poll question right there at www.marlandave.com. Answer it there or on our social networks. That be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you see it. Check out the poll. Give us your answer. Give us what you think is the right answer. And
Vote.
we'll give you
the results.
The results on next week's show. Back to the show.
Can you handle the truth? This is modern American dialogue in a mad world from two unique, fresh, transparent perspectives. This is the Marla and Dave radio show.
I actually want to open this up right quick. I can't get out of here without covering some of the do's and don'ts. I'm going to speak first from a perspective or from the position of a parent who has suffered in silence for many years on these issues. Don't tell me that my family will grow out of it. My children will grow out of it. Don't tell me that it's just a matter of prayer. I appreciate prayer, and I am a Christian, and I believe in God and all the miracles therefore, but there are other things that also need to apply. Don't. Just really don't. Like, these are the things that literally just grab my craw and just make me crazy. Tell me that I need to not share these things because I need to be more supportive of my kids, which means hiding. I think there's a responsibility to it all, but don't. Just don't. Some of the do's that I believe would help is, man, I'm sorry you're going through that. You know what? I'm gonna get more information. That's good to me. Or, wow, I never knew that this was I've never been this close to, or whatever the case is. I really just, if there's anything you need, please let me know, even if it's just to talk. I can empathize. So people who, and that's what I was telling David recently, we even have family that I just don't talk to. I can't about that. I talk to my family, but I can't talk about that because it's so dismissed and it's so painful, and I'm so by myself and I'm so in the dark. And for me, again, I'll say that part of my problem as well is that through the years, due to what David does for a career and a job, we're both equally invested, but I'm always here and I'm always struggling and I'm always in this fight by myself a lot of the times, and I'm drowning. I am literally drowning. So that's where I know God is real in my life, because I really don't know how I get up and get happy. And I just feel like some kind of way this has become part of my life's purpose. And just when there's always just that one little piece that I do find comfort in. Mimi, you have really been that for me in this situation. That one little link that says you're not crazy. And people who dismiss it like, you're the one with the problem, which is why, again, I brought that up. And I do want to again say that our son's diagnosis and problems are not a result of any type of interaction or fault of Brandy. I have to put that out there, point blank, period. But this conversation is very much about that, the support and watching people not recognize what they're seeing on socially and dismissing it and attacking people and doing things, not understanding that you're dealing with, I have compassion for everyone who's suffering in this sick situation. If this is something that you've been burdened with, I know it all too well, and my heart bleeds for you. And if there's something I can do to support you, I'd like to do that. So that's the support that I'm looking for going forward.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, and I guess it's part of the positive side of why we talk about things on the Marla and Dave shows, because I'm a different person than Marla. I completely understand, empathize, and sympathize with where Marla's coming from, but I also, for my personality, I don't have a rigid list of do's and don'ts, because for me, what I've learned through this experience with our children is people handle the same situation differently. And so however you choose to handle it is the way you choose to handle it. And I guess I do have one don't, and that is don't put the way you choose to handle it on somebody else. It's okay for you to have your way, and it's okay for someone else to have their way. And when we start to educate ourselves with the resource that we shared, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI.org, you can learn more about these situations that people like we're going through, other families that are dealing with this, and then it will help you be more supportive in a way that can be relatable to the people that are going through it.
I want to end with just bring up something that's kind of painful, but a reality outcome. With the system the way it is, we are basically at the mercy of outside intervention helping us to solve the problem and to be specific. I mean, you know, when our loved ones that are mentally ill offend those in the community in a way that they can't accept, then is when we receive help. And we can only hope that we receive it in a way that's not damaging. In our family, we pretty much have educated the police in the area that we have a diagnosis, so that if something untoward should happen and our family member is accosted in some way, they won't be treated in a
standard criminal
an inhumane way.
They go straight to the mental health side of things.
But that's really, at the moment, for us and for most, the best option.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Mimi, because that is part of the healthcare issue. One of the things that the debate with the healthcare in general that we were having in Congress this year specifically is with a reduced access to healthcare in general, it's even worse for the mental health care side of things. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
And so that being the
Absolutely.
case, you have to actually get engaged with the political side of things so that you can lobby for and call your congressman, call your senator, call those that are actually going to be dealing with the legal side of things in this law and healthcare in general, and make sure that mental health is something that they understand and that they're willing to deal with.
Well, my heart and my ears are always open. I'm asking those who hear me today to join me. Reach out to me privately. I have the skeletal shell, the starting of my own nonprofit for mental illness, which is Loving Beyond Reason. Devonna Bryant is helping me with that. So there'll be more that you're going to hear about that. But we really need to actually come together, stop shaming, and start supporting. But Dave, before we leave though, we want to let everybody see that you're not really a man. You're a fish. Can you play that, Tony? just basically that's just a moray eel ass beat. That's what Dave was present
that's
for.
a wow.
Yeah, because he couldn't get to the Mayweather fight, so he just went scuba diving.
And by the way, that wasn't me. By the way,
yeah, I'm just saying. So this is whatever.
Anyway,
good job, Black
We don't
Cousteau.
want to trivialize the rest of the show. Again, a resource to help those dealing with mental illness from either side is NAMI.org, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Check it out. Marla's working on her nonprofit. We'll have more information at www.marlandave.com.
And we thank Mimi for joining, Marlene McCraw. And Mom, round of applause for you for stopping in at the spur of the moment and lending your expertise. And you know what? For those who are suffering silently on either end of this, my heart, I'm just hugging you for real. I cry many tears. It's probably one of the toughest things that I've lived through up to date. And it's ongoing, so I'm not sure where this is all going to end up, but keep me in your prayers.
And thank you for dealing with my slight state of confusion due to the medication that I've been taking. I'm just a little
Dave
under the
has
weather.
a cold, so Dave won't be in my bed tonight, but you know what?
I'm sneaking in.
Yeah, it's whatever. Anyway, we'll see you guys next week. Look forward to a lot of fun shows coming up. More information and more fun to be had here in the MaD House. See you next week.